A note about format. This book began as a series of articles I shared on my blog, Challies.com. Many who read the series asked if I would put it in print. Before I did so, though, I asked a couple of friends to read it through. My gratitude goes to Rebecca Stark and Melissa Edgington for making a number of suggestions that undoubtedly improved its quality and usefulness. They also prepared the questions for reflection that follow each chapter. Additionally, Melissa prepared a brief response to each of the biographies. These are titled A Mother's Reflection. Chapter 1. The Hidden Strength of a Weak Mother. John Newton. You may have heard the phrase before, behind every great man, there's a great woman. Like most maxims, it is generally true, even if not universally true. But here's the surprise. Sometimes that great woman is not behind the man, but before him. Sometimes that great woman is not his wife, but his mother. In this book, we are looking at noteworthy Christian leaders whose most formative spiritual influence was a godly mother. We begin with a man whose mother proves that spiritual strength can abide even where there is physical frailty. She was his first and dearest teacher, the one who first taught him truth, and the one who first modeled it in her life. Though his gentle early years would soon give way to the deepest depths of depravity, he would eventually be rescued by God's amazing grace. Later, he would say, "My dear mother, besides the pains she took with me, often commended me with many prayers and tears to God, and I doubt not but I reap the fruits of those prayers to this hour." John Newton would wander, he would run, he would pursue every manner of sin, but he could never escape the great strength of that weak mother. A Pious Woman. John Newton was born on August 4, 1725, in London, the only son of Elizabeth and John. History has not recorded how his parents met and married, but it does tell of the impact they made on their son's life. John Sr. as a stern and often absent father, and Elizabeth as a gentle, caring mother whose life was tragically short-lived. Elizabeth Scatliffe was born around 1705 in Middlesex, England, the lone daughter of Simon Scatliffe, who worked and lived in East London as a maker of mathematical instruments. Little is known of her early days, except that she received a fine education and was raised a nonconformist, a Protestant who chose not to associate with the established Anglican Church. John Sr. was a sea captain who regularly sailed the Mediterranean Sea, taking him away from home for months at a time. He was also a strict disciplinarian who insisted on maritime conventions even in his home. By the time of John's birth, Elizabeth and her husband were members of the old Gravel Lane Independent Meeting House, a dissenting congregation pastored by Dr. David Jennings. While Elizabeth's faith was genuine, her husband's appeared to have been merely formal. John would later say that though his father was a moral man, he had not come under the true impressions of religion. Because of his mother's warm faith and his father's long absences, John grew to be very close to Elizabeth, whom he later described as a dissenter, a pious woman, who was of a weak, consumptive habit and loved retirement. As did so many in that time, Elizabeth suffered from tuberculosis, the disease that would eventually claim her life. Among the many symptoms of her tuberculosis was chronic fatigue, which often confined her to bed. Though Elizabeth was unable to function as she might have wished, she did not squander her days. Knowing that time with her son might be short, she determined to make the most of what remained. She took on the role of teacher and spent hours with John each day. She was a good instructor, and he was an eager, bookish student. He progressed quickly. When I was 4 years old, I could read, hard names excepted, as well as I can now, and could likewise repeat the answers to the question.